The murder trial for former South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh resumes in about 3 hours. As you know, he's accused of killing his wife and son back in 2021. Now, we understand this case has garnered national attention, and this morning we want to give you more insight into what has taken place so far and what we can expect coming up in the next few days. Now, we have criminal defense attorney here, Taylor Bell, a very familiar face at this point. Thank you for joining us again this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I actually want to start off with a comment from a viewer, if we can pop that up on screen. So this is Chas from Columbia, who says, I disagree that Alex Murdaugh sounded credible on the stand. He has no choice but to admit his crimes, which to me showed he's a monster. I didn't want to believe that he did it, but how do you explain the fact that he was heard on video with them moments before they believe the murders took place? Is the timeline off? And one thing that we touched on earlier this morning is that they're going to really want to dive into the timeline of the murders today.
They are. To answer that question in regards to the timeline being off, I think that the way he explained the 911 call actually added more time for him to have checked on the bodies because he was on the phone through his Suburban and outside, and he says, I've checked now.
Wow. And
then confirmed, so it adds more time for that to have taken place in his testimony. Alec is a trial lawyer. He is used to speaking in front of people, so he's really good at it.
Yeah.
And whether or not the jury believes him, ultimately, when they get back in that room, they're all going to have discussions about that.
Exactly. And a lot of things that I saw people talking about online was that he came across very charismatic. It even gave them more of a human-like element. So I feel like yesterday, one of the consensuses was that this could have actually been a win for the defense by him taking the stand. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about is him admitting all of the things that he has done. I mean, he admitted that he's lied about being at the dog kennel, that he lied about the last time that he saw his wife and son alive. He also admitted to lying to clients and stealing money. What is your thoughts on that? Is this a good thing that he is admitting all of this, or do you think this is going to hurt him?
He couldn't deny it. The evidence that already had been presented by the prosecution, they'd already proved he did those things.
Yep.
So he had to admit it. He had to admit it, and that's an attempt to gain credibility, to say, yeah, I admitted to these things, and Dick was really sly in getting out there that he's going to prison already for those financial crimes, to kind of give the jury an out when they go back there. Well, he's going to get in trouble for those financial crimes, so if they didn't prove the murder case, we're not necessarily letting him off scot-free.
Yes, exactly. He definitely dropped that seed. Now, something else that I found to be very interesting, a lot of people talked about this online as well. Let's talk about him calling Paul, Paw, and him calling Maggie, Mags. Now, we had never heard those nicknames before, even in his interviews with the police, until he took the stand yesterday. Do you think that was intentional, and what do you think that did for him?
It absolutely was intentional. However, I don't think it's off of what he actually did when he was at home with his family. People don't know what I call my son. I call my son Tan sometimes. I sometimes call him Tanner. So I think he was trying to get to the jury by humanizing himself and his care for his family. I think it was good. It might have been an overly done a bit. However, the interviews with law enforcement are more official.
Yeah.
They're not a sit-down conversation, which that's what the defense was trying to show here, a sit-down conversation with the jury. You noticed every time he turned his chair towards the jury and spoke to them. He wasn't speaking to the attorney, he was speaking to the jury, because that's who's going back there and making the decision at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I found that to be very intentional as well. Now, we've got to talk about blood evidence. We've got about a minute. I feel like that's something that is probably going to get talked about today. A lot of people are questioning, listen, if you say you checked on the body but didn't have any blood on you, how is that possible? So can you give us a little insight on what you think will happen?
The father in me can't understand that part. That's my biggest problem here, is I see my son, I see my wife, I don't just grasp them and cry all over top of them. However, you see, pardon, but his head decapitated. It's pretty clear that if someone's head is decapitated and their brain is laying on the sidewalk, that they're not alive. there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
I do struggle with that. You're going to hear about that. However, something some people might have not picked up on was when Alec talked back to Creighton Waters about the high velocity blood spatter.
Yeah.
He said, y'all tried to show that I had that, and now a week before trial, after my attorneys called y'all out on that, y'all have switched gears. And so that was a little sly move by him. But we're going to go through a timeline of each and every minute of the data from OnStar, from the cell phones.
Yeah.
They're going to ask him about that to clarify his position. Well, why didn't you tell us this?
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Attorney Bell here. We really appreciate you joining us.